802 pounds. 2018. Those two numbers explain more about what happened to the Honda Goldwing than any dealer will ever tell you. And if you are sitting on one right now with your riding season half gone, the second number is the one that should bother you. 2018 is the year Honda last redesigned this motorcycle from the ground up. It is now the middle of 2026. Honda has announced color changes for 2026 and nothing else. No 2027 Goldwing has been shown to the American market as of this recording, and the people who follow Honda's product cycle closely are quietly circling 2028 to 2030 for the next real redesign. So here is the uncomfortable question nobody in the touring world wants to say out loud. What happens to the undisputed king of long-distance riding when the king stops moving and everybody else spends 8 years catching up? You already know the answer because you have felt it in the parking lot at every rally you have been to in the last 3 seasons. The bikes parked next to the wings do not look outgunned anymore. Now let me be very clear about something before we go one step further, because I have no interest in doing a hit piece on a machine that earned its reputation honestly. The Goldwing is not a bad motorcycle. It is one of the most mechanically honest machines ever sold in this country. But the record is the record, and the record includes NHTSA campaign data, showing Honda recalling 18,196 model year 2018 through 2021 GL1800 units because the primary drive gear bolt on the crankshaft could break, with the federal filing describing engine stall and rear wheel lockup as the consequence, backed by 51 warranty claims and 1 reported injury before the remedy was issued. Add the earlier fuel pump campaign covering roughly 17,374 units across the GL1800 and 2 sport models where a deformed impeller could kill the pump and stall the bike. And before anyone types that this proves Honda has slipped, understand this, because it is the entire spine of this video. Every single brand on this list has a federal recall record. Harley-Davidson filed a campaign in April of 2026 covering 88,039 motorcycles. That is not a Honda problem. That is a heavyweight touring problem, and any channel that tells you otherwise is selling you something. What has actually changed is not that the Goldwing got worse. It is that the competition finally got serious, and 5 specific machines now beat it on measurable ground. You are probably assuming the #1 spot goes to the biggest American V-twin with the loudest badge. It does not. The bike that takes the top spot did not win on displacement. It won on the one number that predicts whether you will still love your motorcycle at 60,000 miles, and we are going to get there by way of a machine most riders wrote off completely. Start at number 5, and start with the bike that just quietly proved the entire thesis of this video by dying. The Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Voyager, the full-dress 1,700 cubic centimeters Tourer with the trunk and the fairing, listed at $20,199 for 2025 and did not return for 2026. Gone. What did survive is its bagger sibling, the Vulcan 1700 Vaquero ABS, which carries into the 2026 model year at $19,999 with an $840 destination charge. And here is why a discontinued platform's last survivor still beats a Goldwing for a specific kind of rider. Ask yourself what you actually spend money on over 10 years of ownership, not horsepower, labor hours. The Vaquero runs a liquid-cooled 52-degree 1,700 cubic centimeters V-twin with hydraulic valve lash adjusters, which means the valve adjustment interval that eats a weekend and a service invoice on other platforms simply does not exist in your maintenance life. Peak torque lands at 2,750 revolutions per minute, which is exactly where you live on a loaded 2-lane, and it does it through a belt final drive that costs a fraction of a shaft rebuild if something ever goes wrong. Kawasaki backs it with a 36-month limited warranty, matching Honda and doubling what one of the American brands on this list offers. But the real argument is not mechanical, it is emotional, and it is one nobody in the industry will say to your face. There is a particular kind of dread that shows up around year 6 of owning a fully electronic flagship tourer. And it has nothing to do with whether the bike runs. It is the moment a module fails, the dealer quotes you a part number instead of a repair, and you realize you cannot fix your own motorcycle anymore. On a Goldwing tour at 845 pounds or more with full bodywork, an electrically adjustable windscreen, integrated audio, and the 7-speed DCT, accessing anything behind that fairing is a labor operation before it is a parts operation. The Vaquero is the opposite philosophy. Fewer systems, fewer failure points, fewer things that require a laptop and a dealer appointment to diagnose. That is worth real money over 50,000 miles, and it is worth something harder to price, which is the confidence that your bike is still yours. Now, here is the trade you are making, stated honestly, because this is the exact reason it sits at number 5 and not number 1. You are giving up wind protection, you are giving up a top box, and you are giving up the electronic rider aids that riders in their 60s increasingly depend on in traffic. Which brings up the question that kills the simplicity argument for a lot of you. What happens when simplicity is not enough? When you are 2 up and loaded at 8,000 feet on a Colorado pass, and you need real torque at 2,200 revolutions per minute without downshifting twice. That question is exactly where Harley-Davidson lives, and number 4 on this list is the 2026 Road Glide Limited at $32,999. Let me address the elephant first because you already thought it before I said it. Yes, the heat. Yes, the reliability reputation. And yes, Harley filed one of its largest touring recalls in recent memory this year. The NHTSA filing from April of 2026 covers 88,039 motorcycles across the 2024 through 2026 touring and cruiser range, including the Road Glide and Street Glide, because a supplier-produced airbox baseplate could have a blocked breather port, allowing crankcase pressure to build and oil to eject when the dipstick is pulled. Harley's own estimate is that roughly 0.4% of that population actually carries the defect, and the internal timeline shows the problem was first flagged in production in April of 2025, before the material cause was identified in February of 2026. Read that timeline as a rider, not as a fan or a critic. 10 months. That is your realistic expectation for how long a supplier defect can live inside a modern production line before it reaches a federal filing, and that is true at every manufacturer in this segment. So why does it still beat the Goldwing? Because of what is between the frame rails. The Milwaukee 8 VVI VT 117, a 1,923 cubic centimeters air and oil-cooled V-twin with variable valve timing, produces a claimed 106 horsepower and 131 pound-feet of torque. Put that against the Goldwing's 1,833 cubic centimeters flat 6, making 125 horsepower and 125 pound-feet, and the surface reading says Honda wins on paper. Except you do not ride peak numbers, you ride the area under the curve. The VVT 117 delivers its torque low and flat, in the range where a loaded bagger actually operates on a grade. And Harley claims roughly 7.4% more torque and 14% more horsepower than the outgoing Milwaukee 8 114. The variable valve timing is not marketing, it is the specific engineering answer to the old heat and low-end complaint, because it lets the engine breathe correctly at low RPM instead of being tuned as a compromise. On top of that, Harley cut 13 pounds from the Road Glide Limited versus the previous generation, added integrated fog lamps in the lowers, and put the frame-mounted shark nose fairing in front of you, which is the single most underrated piece of engineering in American touring because it does not transmit steering load into your wrists at highway speed. Here is the deeper thing, though, and it is the part that makes this bike genuinely worth its price to the right rider. Resale. The thing you are actually buying with a Harley is the deepest used market, the deepest parts network, and the highest density of independent mechanics in the country who will work on your bike without a factory subscription. When you are 200 miles from home in a town with one shop, that network is not brand loyalty, it is infrastructure. And if you are the rider who wants that infrastructure with better long-haul comfort than any bagger delivers, this is the natural moment to look at what a Road Glide Limited costs against the two bikes ranked above it, because both of them beat it in ways that are going to make some of you uncomfortable. Number 3 is the BMW K 1600 GTL, and for 2027, it lists at $30,095 with a $1,195 destination charge. Look at what you get for less money than a comparably equipped American flagship. A 1,649 cubic centimeters inline six-cylinder engine, the narrowest production 6 in motorcycling, producing 160 horsepower and 180 newton meters, which is roughly 133 pound-feet of torque. That is 35 more horsepower than the Goldwing from 184 cubic centimeters less displacement. It is not close. The K1600 platform also carries adaptive headlight technology, dynamic traction control with lean angle sensing, and electronically adjustable suspension, and for 2027, every new BMW includes the 600-mile Ultimate Care break-in service as standard equipment, subject to a 6-month or 750-mile limit. That last detail sounds small. It is not. A manufacturer bundling the first service is a manufacturer trying to remove the single most common excuse riders use to skip the break-in inspection, and skipped early service is one of the most reliable predictors of expensive failures later. So what is the catch? Because there is always a catch at this price point. Complexity, and this is the open loop I want you to hold on to until later in this video, because it resolves in a way that changed my own thinking about what to recommend. Electronically adjustable suspension on any modern flagship is a closed system. When a shock with an integrated electronic damping module fails outside of warranty, you are not buying a shock, you are buying a module, a sensor, a wiring harness section, and the dealer labor to marry all three to the bike's software. On a European flagship, that is not a $200 fix. There is a bike coming up on this list that took a deliberately different engineering path on exactly that component, and the difference is going to matter more to you at 70,000 miles than any horsepower figure in this video. The emotional layer here is worth naming too, because BMW buyers rarely admit it. You are not just buying performance, you are buying against the fear of being the guy whose bike is too old to be interesting and too new to be simple. The K1600 GTL answers that beautifully for about 6 years. After that, you are married to a dealer network that is significantly thinner across the American interior than Harley or Honda, and if you live more than 150 miles from a BMW Motorrad dealer, you should weigh that harder than the horsepower number, which sets up the contradiction that defines the top of this list. BMW wins the power-to-weight fight without breaking a sweat. But the bike at number 2 beats both Honda and BMW on the single metric that riders past 60 actually care about. And it is not power, and it is not price. Number 2 is the Indian Roadmaster PowerPlus, running the PowerPlus 112, a liquid-cooled 1,834 cubic centimeters, V-twin rated at 126 horsepower and 133 pound-feet of torque at 3,600 revolutions per minute. The 2026 Roadmaster PowerPlus Limited 112 lists around $36,999 depending on trim and audio package, with the 108 engine version starting near $33,249. That is real money, more than a Goldwing Tour, so the case has to be made on something other than price, and it is made on geometry. The metric riders past 60 care about is not horsepower. It is the relationship between seat height, legroom, and reach to the bars, because that triangle is what determines whether your hips and knees are functional at hour 6 or screaming at hour 3. The Roadmaster platform is built around a lightweight cast aluminum front frame with an inverted front suspension and an electronically adjustable Fox rear shock, with floorboards and a rider triangle set specifically for long-haul touring rather than adapted from a cruiser. The Goldwing's seat height of 29.3 inches is genuinely excellent, and its center of gravity is the lowest in the class. But low center of gravity is a parking lot virtue. Legroom is a 600-mile virtue, and those are not the same thing. Now let me close that open loop from the BMW section because this is the part that actually shifted my recommendation. The rear suspension question. Indian's approach on the PowerPlus touring platform uses electronic preload adjustment on a Fox shock rather than a fully integrated semi-active damping system that continuously varies compression and rebound through the ride computer. Fewer variables, fewer sensors in the loop, a simpler failure mode when it does fail, and a simpler repair path when it does. That is not a knock on BMW's engineering, which is genuinely excellent and does things Indian's system cannot. It is a statement about what you are exposed to financially at 70,000 miles and out of warranty, and if you have owned a European flagship long enough to have paid for one of those repairs, you already know exactly what I am describing. Here is the honest counterweight, and it is a big one that most channels covering Indian right now are conveniently not mentioning. In February of 2026, Polaris completed the separation of Indian Motorcycle into a standalone business and sold a majority stake to a private equity firm. That is a documented corporate fact, not speculation. It does not mean your bike will stop being supported. It does mean that if you are buying an Indian in 2026 or 2027, the dealer network stability and warranty administration questions are legitimate ones to ask in the showroom, and Indian's standard 24-month limited warranty is already shorter than the 36 months Honda and Kawasaki give you. Weigh that with open eyes. So what actually dethroned the Goldwing for the top spot? Not the biggest engine, not the loudest badge. The bike that was engineered from a blank sheet specifically to attack the Goldwing's home ground, and that took the most direct swing at it in the 2027 model year announcement. Number 1 is the Indian Pursuit, and specifically the Pursuit Limited 112, listing around $35,499, with the Dark Horse 112 near $36,999. Understand what this machine actually is because a lot of riders still file it mentally as another bagger. It is not. It is the only American-built, liquid-cooled, chassis-mounted full-fairing tourer with a top trunk, hard-locking saddlebags, a power-adjustable windscreen, adjustable fairing vents, and over 36 gallons of storage aimed with total precision at the exact rider who has been buying Goldwings for 30 years. The PowerPlus 112 makes 126 horsepower and 133 pound-feet, and that same engine architecture won the King of the Baggers championship, which matters less as a bragging right than as a durability data point because racing a 1,834 cubic centimeter touring V-twin at sustained load is the most brutal accelerated wear test a manufacturer can voluntarily submit to. Against the Goldwing's 125 horsepower and 125 pound-feet from a platform architecturally frozen since 2018, the Pursuit is not just competitive, it is ahead on every drivetrain number that matters. But power is not why it takes the top spot. Rider awareness is. The PowerPlus 112 comes standard with a package that reads like a car spec sheet and, more importantly, like a package designed by people who understand what happens to reaction time after 60. Blind spot warning, rear collision warning, tailgate warning, which tells you when a vehicle is following too closely, and if you have spent any time on an interstate in the last 5 years, you know exactly why that feature exists. Bike hold control, electronically linked brakes, and smart lean technology running a 6-axis Bosch IMU, providing lean-sensitive traction control and lean-sensitive ABS with drag torque control. Now compare that against what a 2026 Goldwing gives you. Honda offers Honda Selectable Torque Control, combined ABS, Hill Start Assist, 4 ride modes, and, on the top trim, a genuine motorcycle airbag, which is a legitimately world-leading safety technology no one else offers. But cornering ABS, blind spot monitoring, and rear collision alerting are not on the American Goldwing spec sheet. That is the gap. Honda pioneered the category, then held the architecture steady while the rest of the segment shipped the electronics that keep aging riders out of accidents. For 2027, Indian pushed further, making the PowerPlus 112 and its rider assist package standard across the touring family and announcing the lineup on July 24th of 2026, months before Honda has shown a 2027 Goldwing to this market at all. That is not a fanboy conclusion. That is a product cadence conclusion, and product cadence is the most honest predictor there is of where a segment is heading. So here is your decision matrix, and I am going to be blunt about who should ignore everything I just said. If you already own a Goldwing that is running well, do not sell it. The residual value on a well-kept wing is strong precisely because the platform has been stable since 2018, and a mature platform means a mature parts supply, a known failure list, and a mechanic base that has seen everything this bike can do. Stability is worth money. If you ride 2-up more than half your miles, the Goldwing's low center of gravity, its 29.3-inch seat height, and its 61-liter trunk still make it the easiest heavyweight in America to manage at walking speed, and if your passenger has a strong opinion, your passenger is right. If you want maximum simplicity and minimum service cost, the Vulcan 1700 Vaquero at $19,999 is still the most under-discussed value in touring. If you want infrastructure and resale, the Road Glide Limited at $32,999. If you want the most engine for the money and you live near a dealer, the K 1600 GTL at $30,095. And if you want the machine that was purpose-built to take the Goldwing's crown, the Pursuit is where the segment moved. Buy in fall or winter, not in April. Ask for the recall completion record by VIN before you sign anything on any brand, including the ones I ranked highest. Ask what the out-of-warranty cost of the rear shock assembly is and watch the salesperson's face when you do. Now, before you tell me I got this wrong, and some of you absolutely will, there is one number I deliberately left out of this entire video. Not horsepower, not price, not recall counts. It is the figure that separates the riders who keep a touring bike for 100,000 miles from the ones who quietly trade out at 40,000 and never say why. And once you know it, half the rankings you have seen on this platform stop making sense. If you own one of these 5, or you own a Goldwing and you think the data in this video is wrong, tell me your model year, your mileage, and what has actually failed. Not what you read. What failed on your bike, with your hands on it. Because that is the only data set that has ever been worth anything, and I want to know whether it says what I think it says.